Morning, dear friends. Welcome. Thanks for joining. Monday, the 20th of Adar, March 13th. Yes, 2023, 5783. And studying the entire Talmud, one page, one line at a time. And it's Pesachim that we're at, chapter 1, page 1, which is B2, Beis Amud Beis. Today, with Hashem's help, we will conclude our exploration of the meaning of the word or. And although it seemed to be a highly technical, and maybe we were beating, where's our barrel? Got to find a good analogy, beating a dead horse over and over to try to probe the meaning of or.
How did that go?
Going to take a lovely turn at the end of today's discussion. I have to say, I studied Pesachim in yeshiva, and parts of Pesachim I studied later on, but I actually had forgotten the exact direction the Gemara takes. And I think you'll enjoy it. So let's get started. Dedicating our learning for the well-being of the dear members of the Chabura, sages, scholars, and our question has been, what does the word or in or la'arba asr? What is the word that or to the 14th? And we know it means, and the Gemara already concluded that it means the night that begins the 14th, which is the night of Erev Pesach. We know, because we've experienced it, that the night before we do B'dikas Chametz, and the day of Erev Pesach, we do a Biur Chametz. But our Gemara here is probing, exploring that. And it's, again, you might find somewhat shocking or surprising the twists and turns of our Gemara. I just want to remind you that we finished off yesterday with a somewhat mind-spinning discussion about which was a brisa that quoted a debate between Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov and Rabbi Yehuda about when to start the non-melacha of Erev Pesach. And based on that discussion, we wanted to find out if there is a precedent to split up a day and a night. Is there a difference if it's rabbinic or biblical? That was the whole discussion that was then. Suffice it to say, we attempted to use the reference to or conclusively to prove that it is night. By the time the Gemara was over, we need another source. And that's what today we're going to do. May say another challenge to the notion that or could mean daytime. Ein masiyin masuos elo ala chodesh shenira bizmanoi. No, and we'll learn in Maseches Rosh Hashanah that at a certain point, the way they conveyed the message of the new month was through mountaintop fires, and that was the way they spread the word. They did not have telegrams or emails or even AOL Messenger. Am I frozen?
We hear you.
Was I frozen?
Oh, no, you're fine.
Okay, everyone appeared frozen. So in those days, the best thing they could do was, well, I think Native Americans are, according to our lore anyways, use smoke signals. I don't know if the Jewish people use that, but they use torches. They had a system of conveying the message to announce the onset of a new month. So here is a brisa on the subject of how and when they would use that torch fire system to convey the news of the new month. So we do not light these fire torches ela ala chodesh shenira bizmanoi exclusively if we saw the new moon at the first opportunity, meaning that Rosh Chodesh, the first of the new month, is what could have been the 30th of the previous month. Does that make sense? On the 30th day of the previous month. So basically, Rosh Chodesh typically could have been on 2 days. The 30th day of the previous month or the 31st day of the previous month, right? That's why sometimes, again, not to confuse with today's Rosh Chodesh arrangement where you could have, where it's all predetermined. But in those days, pretty much you had 2 days, the 30th of the previous month or the Aleph. If you saw the new moon, so then the 30th day becomes Rosh Chodesh and it's not part of the old month. And if you don't see it, So then the previous month has a 30th day, and then the 31st day becomes Rosh Chodesh. So we only light the torches to notice, to inform that the moon had been sighted. But if the moon was not sighted on time, the absence of the torches would be the symbol, and everyone would observe the next day as Rosh Chodesh. The Amosai, Masin, Masuis, and when exactly would those torches be lit? Le'ar Iburai. Le'ar, to the or of the next day or the additional day. Forget for a moment this funny line and how to decipher it, and know that we're talking about the utilization of torches in the nighttime, the night that leads to the next day. Again, the word Iburai, we need to see Rashi. Give us a moment. Alma, this is strong, conclusive proof that ar, the word ar means or tohu, nighttime. And the Gemara says, yep, Shma Mina, this is another resounding proof that ar means nighttime. Now let's just use Rabbi Steinsaltz and then Rashi to decipher precisely what's going on. They light them on the or of the next day, meaning at the end of the 30th day, or the beginning of the previous month, leading into the evening of the 31st day, meaning the night of bays of the month. The 30th day is called the additional day because it is sometimes appended to the previous month, which would have otherwise consisted of 29 days. So apparently R means evening, and that's a good proof. So again, a month, imagine 31 days on the calendar. The first day is Rosh Chodesh of the previous month. 29 days later, that's guaranteed to be month X. Let's just talk about Adar because it's Adar. So Rosh Chodesh Adar we had. Rosh Chodesh Adar until the 29th day of the Adar is guaranteed to be Adar. The 30th day, in a time when the calendar was in flux, it was fluid, it was determined by the Beis Din. Now, when we're going to learn Maseches Rosh Hashanah, it's going to be entirely not clear that Adar would be open to such a... but anyways, so the 30th day now becomes a day that is a free agent. It could either be the 30th day of Adar, or if the new moon is sighted, it'll become the first day of Nisan. So imagine we see the moon on the 30th day. So now it becomes Rosh Chodesh Nisan. When do we spread the word that today we determine that it's Rosh Chodesh? The first opportunity to use the torch system to be highly visible, which is at night. So when do you light the torch? The night that's going to lead into the next day. Let's see Rashi.
Rabbi,
Question about the intricacy of the torches. Let's read Rashi and then we'll answer. Is it about that?
yeah, I could wait. No problem.
Let's just read Rashi and then we'll go. Abukais, torches. V'roishei harim, that were on top of mountains. People that were working for the Bezdin would do so. To inform to let everybody know that today, the 30th day, the free agent day, the day that's either the 30th day of Adar, the first day of Nisan, is Rosh Chodesh. On the 30th, Shenir Lekadesh, which is able to be sanctified and made Rosh Chodesh. When the previous month has an extra day. And then the 31st day, the free agent day, stays in the previous month. So the next day becomes Rosh Chodesh. That day is the default day, it just becomes Rosh Chodesh. The intention of the author of this price is it wants to tell us the Achaser Avdinon Masuais, a month. If the previous month is missing a day, we do torches, the Amole. But if the previous month ends up being Amole, meaning a 30-day month, we don't need to use the torches. And the absence of the fire system is the best notification that Rosh Chodesh is going to be on the 31st day, meaning that the previous day, the free agent day, which as I'm calling it, belongs to the previous one. La'ar ibur, it's a funny word. Leil she'avar shloishim. The night that follows the 30th day, to let us know that the day, Shloishim, Basically, Rashi, there's some interesting gearsites. The word or ibore is a funny word because ibor is usually would have been a reference to the 30th day, not to the 31st day. So it looks like there are some interesting versions of Rashi. The punchline, the bottom line, doesn't need to get into the intricate calendar complexities. The fact of the matter is, we're talking about torches which were deployed at nighttime. And so the reference to the word or, regardless of the slight awkwardness of this line, or iburai, it's clear and conclusive that it means nighttime, and the Gemara says absolutely right on. Yes.
I asked the question about the lights. So it is the 30th day of the month, and we are not sure whether it's the last day of the previous month or the first day of the next month.
Yes.
So if they light the light torches, that means that this 30th day was the last day of the previous month.
No, if they light torches, it means today, the day that passed was Rosh Chodesh.
So that means that we miss celebrating Rosh Chodesh because
Correct.
It passed. Oh, okay.
Correct. So in temple, I know that it's a very important. I was waiting to see who was going to make that conclusion or who was going to develop that thought. Bottom line is that in the temple times, Rosh Chodesh was mostly a Jerusalem-centric or Sanhedrin-centric event, which was mostly relevant to the actual determining of the calendar and to the offerings in the Beis Hamikdash. So there were special karbanot that were brought in the Beis Hamikdash on Rosh Chodesh. The fact that today Rosh Chodesh is celebrated by all of us is a post for sure after the first Beis Hamikdash, possibly even after the second Beis Hamikdash, where we all commemorate because we have the ability to know when Rosh Chodesh is. Now that statement is not entirely true.
They were missing those special karbanot for Rosh Chodesh?
No, they weren't missing the karbanot because.
But they learned that it was Rosh Chodesh only when it was night.
No. The Sanhedrin was in Jerusalem. So that deliberative body knew right away when Rosh Chodesh is. But how do you send a telegram out to all the outlying cities so they know how to observe the calendar? So that they would discover retroactively. So basically, they would only get the message, hey guys, today was Rosh Chodesh, which means you see the candle, now you know it's not Rosh Chodesh, it's Beis. Now, the reason why what I said is not absolute, where I said that the people that were not in Jerusalem didn't get to celebrate Rosh Chodesh, is because when we're going to learn Masechet of Rosh Hashanah, which is the tractate that talks most about the new month, there were some Rosh Chodesh day, there were some months that it was predetermined when Rosh Chodesh would be. There were other months where they were waiting for people to testify and go through the ritual, and it had to do with all different factors which are beyond the scope of today's discussion. But suffice it to say, the way, the essence of the process was, if witnesses came to the Sanhedrin, to the High Court in Jerusalem, and they testified and they were vetted that they saw the new month, a declaration would go out in Jerusalem immediately. Today's Rosh Chodesh. Ostensibly, the temple ritual, they were on standby. They had all the ingredients, let's say, for the offerings of Rosh Chodesh ready. And as soon as they got the word, they implemented Rosh Chodesh. And then that was the only essential Jewish ritual that they needed to know is Rosh Chodesh. For the rest of the universe, the Jewish universe, what was most important was just to know when and how the Jewish calendar is established. It was less relevant, so meaning today we daven Musaf right on Rosh Chodesh. Why do we daven Musaf on Rosh Chodesh? That is to take the place of the Musaf offering that was done on behalf of all the Jewish people in the temple. And so, indeed, prior to the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, Judaism, as is commonly discussed, was more temple-centric. And for the rest of the Jewish people, they had less of a role to play on Rosh Chodesh. It's evident from Tanakh that there were Sudot on Rosh Chodesh and celebrations, but anyways, Reb Beryl?
I have a different question. We have here a very clear meaning for La'or. Why did we wait until now to bring this solid evidence? We went through all kinds of places to look, and here we have it directly, clear.
So I'll give you two answers. Number one, maybe this is how the conversation unfolded. And so the Gemara wants to include the non-proofs because in the course of that dialogue, important commentary and interpretations were developed about the meaning of those verses. And so it's not just the destination, the journey is of substance. And so if that was how the conversation unfolded, and by the course of the conversation, we had the opportunity to have additional insight into meaning, so the Gemara preserves that for us, that would be the cop-out answer. I mean, it's the true answer, but it would not be as exciting. The second answer is, if you notice, there was a pattern in our Gemara. Initially, we attempted to define the word or based on biblical verses. We wanted to find a precedent in biblical Hebrew. At this point, we are less able to point, or we're not pointing to verses in the Torah, but we're pointing to Mishnaic use of the word to prove that it means or. But for whatever reason, and I don't think it needs a lot of elaboration, there would be a preference to find a biblical makar, and that's at the very least that is the pattern of how our Gemara unfolded. So the initial page and the initial conversation was all about verses from Bereshis and from Shmuel and from Job and Bereshis, right? To was it Yirmiyahu? I don't remember now. Or Yirmiyahu, I think. To point. Then we moved on to different braitot, first to establish the halachic fact, and then other usage of the word or, and we're not done yet. So it's a good question. It's a question I think needs to be considered in this discussion. But those are my basic thoughts. There are probably a number of other answers as well, but that's what's top of mind as you asked the question. Samsara asks a cute question. Rashi says that how do we know that or means night? Because they're using the torches, and the torch system would only work at night. Right? In the daytime, you're not going to really see a fire very far. And so the Chassam Sofer asks a cute question. He says in a funny, Makshim HaTalmidim. Chassam Sofer, in addition to being a great rabbi, you also had a yeshiva. And so he says, I'm teaching the Gemara, and the students are asking a good question. Maybe the torches were deployed at the first star, but at dawn, it's still very dark, and the torches could work. How do you know? How can you prove conclusively that this is the nighttime? Maybe it's the beginning of day. So he says very simple, because if we'll learn more about the story of how the torches would work, there was a series of mountaintops that would light and light and light and light and light and light and spread the light across. It was to have this domino type of effect. And as it's described in the Gemara, the whole region looked like it was on fire because all the mountaintops had those torches. And that deployment would take multiple hours. If it was going to start only in the morning, by the time the torch system was over, it would already be deep into day. And so obviously, says the Chassam Sofer, we're talking about nighttime. And not that we study every Chassam Sofer, but I thought that was a cute and very balabatish way to think about it. Rabbi Alan, your hand is raised. Please go ahead.
The American Indians had a better way of doing it. They used smoke signals during the daytime. They were on top of mountaintops and they used smoke signals.
Did anyone hear me reference the American Indians today? I did.
No.
Right?
I didn't hear that.
Does anyone? No. Anyone heard me say about the smoke signals? All right, let's continue. Yes. All right, let's continue on to the next one. Meisvei means an objection. We are basically challenging Rav Huna, who says that or means nagi, means light, or daytime. Koyin was standing all night, burning up different limbs on the Mizbeach. I'm sorry, I stand corrected. Now we're going to try to challenge sorry, no. This is a challenge to say that or should mean daytime. I'm sorry. The kohen is standing on light on
The
the
driveway is good, just the traffic in the mornings are ridiculous.
What?
I think-
Okay, I muted you. I don't think you were talking to us. If you were, please unmute again. If the kohen is busy all night on the mizbeach, in the oira, he needs to wash his hands and feet again. That's the teaching of Rebbe. What do we see here? The word oira clearly means morning. Or it says one flick, one rejection. Oira shani. Oira and Or are two totally different universes. Why? Oira means the light of day. Oira. Oir is Oir is a time. Oira means as the sun, as day breaks. Let's read Rashi. The Kasava Rebbe's position is Lina Paiselis B'Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. Although the kohen is actively engaged in temple service, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi was of the opinion that the moment that night ended and it's a new day, to be overnight, you need to wash your hands again. And that's a discussion that Rashi tells us in Meseches Zvachim, which we will study, God willing, when we get there. Oira Shani, Heicha the Tani Oira, like Polig Rabbi Yehuda, the Lashon Yom. Everyone agrees that Oira means daytime. Or that's a difference. Why? Let's see Rabbi Steindl. Rabbi Steindl doesn't elaborate. Neither does anyone. It's pretty evident that Oira is a totally different word than Or. Let's see now a challenge to Rav Huna, to the notion that Or might be day. And along the way, we're going to encounter an entirely different halachic discussion. And that's kind of what we're doing. This is a rapid fire Talmudic ping pong. Question, answer, and you have to be right away ready for the next subject. So here is the 30-second introduction to this. The halacha is that in Judaism, males and females are susceptible to ritual impurity in different manners, in different ways. And primarily it revolves around different bodily discharges. A woman based on the menstrual cycle and males based on other discharges and other scenarios. Additionally, a woman was halachically considered after childbirth both ritually impure for a certain period of time, but then following that, there's a certain period of time where the woman, regardless of her menstrual status, regardless of any kind of discharge, would have a free zone of becoming ritual impure. She does not become ritually impure. More importantly, and more relevant to our discussion, is that at the close of this unit of time, she would bring a carbon, an offering. The offering of thanks to Hashem. Except that offering could also be brought if a person, God forbid, had a miscarriage. Long story short, there's an 80-day window after the woman gives birth that she brings a carbon. If she would miscarry after the 80-day period, she would have to bring an additional offering. Sometimes in Jewish tradition, both in the Mitzorah ritual and the Zav ritual for male and for the Yoledes ritual, there are carbonis that were brought at the close of the purification process. So again, maybe a little more information than needed, but the Gemara here is making essentially one point, which is the use of the word or. Hamapeles, woman who God forbid miscarries, or l'shmoinim ve'echad, the night leading into the 81st day after her childbirth. Beis Shammai poitrim mikarbon. Beis Shammai says this woman need not bring a second offering, although usually a mapeles, a person who miscarries, would bring a carbon in the purification process that follows. We could spend an hour and a half trying to understand why there are offerings, why there's ritual impurity, and the deep emotional pain of a miscarriage, which are worthy topics, but we're gonna try to stay focused on the core question, which is the or question. Beis Shammai says this woman need not bring a second carbon; she brings one carbon. Beis Hillel mechayvim, but Beis Hillel actually makes her have to bring an additional carbon. Let's read our Steindl here. Although, again, much of what he's going to say is presumably what I said. The Torah obligates a woman to bring an offering after childbirth, and this includes a miscarriage. However, one offering suffices any birth or miscarriage that occurs within 80 days of the original birth, as halachic ramifications of the birth last 80 days, which is what I mentioned. The Mishnah cited addresses the borderline case. A woman who miscarries on the night of the 81st day, Shammai exempts her from bringing an offering because she's going to bring an offering the next day. Basil makes her bring two offerings. This is one of those ironic cases where it sounds like Beis Shammai is lenient and Beis Hillel is machmir. Let's continue. Amr lahen Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel challenges Beis Shammai. Why are you treating the night of the 81st day different than the day of the 81st day? Usually in Jewish law, night and day are one unit. If 80 days has a specific significance for the conveyance of ritual impurity, certainly those same halachis are concurrent for offerings. That's the challenge that Beis Hillel challenges Beis Shammai, and this is recorded in the Mishnah. Again, our objective here is not really to dig deep into the question of ritual impurity. It's to look at one word, or, which we know either means day or night. And from the context of this discussion, we are absolutely certain that or means night. There's no other way to define this conversation. Maishna or me yom. What's the difference between or and yom? Nighttime and daytime. So let the Gemara make that case. Amar Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. Maishna or shmoni. Mi yom shmoni v'echad. Shmamina or ortahu. We have no doubt that the meaning of the word or here is orta, nighttime. The Gemara says shmamina. Yes, this is another Mishnah which clearly and conclusively shows us that the use of the word or means nighttime. So at this point, I now stand corrected. Because if you recall, originally I said, why is there this whole discussion about or in the context of Pesach? I said, because this is the only use. I made the case that it introduces this language into Hebrew language. So obviously, this Gemara has excavated additional sources that make the case that the word or is used in a more prevalent manner. And that further supports the assertion that we made in the beginning that although or maybe Erlar Asar Pesachim is the most popular case, clearly that is actually what the word meant, and that's actually how it was used. Of course, we don't have many texts that preserve that usage of the language prior to the Mishnah, or the time of the Mishnah, and that's the exercise that our Gemara is engaged in. So again, just to recap really, really fast. There's a halachic debate about a term, an 80-day period of time that ends after 80 days. There's a discussion about the night after the 80th day, which is the 81st night, which leads into the 81st day. And there's a machlokes about that 81st night. And in the Mishnah, we have a debate, a conversation, where Beis Hillel challenges Beis Shammai by saying, why do you distinguish between or and yom, between night and day? And this indeed, says the Gemara, is a resounding piece of evidence, resounding support, and another instance where the word or is used to mean. Meisvei, the Gemara is not done. But hold on tight, because it's gonna get very when the Gemara ends, you're gonna be happy. I think you're gonna like how it ends. Meisvei yachal yenechal or l'shlishi. So this is another discussion, another halachic case. Here the discussion is about the expiration of temple offerings. As we know, there were a variety of temple offerings, and most of the temple offerings were consumed either by the owners / donors, or by the koyanim, or by a combination, and different karbanot had different expiration dates. Let's take a look now at this price. Meisvei yachal. We're talking about a shlomim. A shlomim carbon is a peace offering. It was a carbon that was brought by a Jew, and it would keep the koyanim in business, it would keep the mizbeach in business, and it would afford the owners an opportunity to enjoy a delicious barbecue, temple-side barbecue. Okay, not exactly, but you get it. So yachal, when is the expiration of the shlomim? Or lashlishi, I might think that one should be permitted to consume the shlomim offering the night that follows 2 days. So you bring the carbon on day 1, you can eat the carbon on day 2. What about after sundown? Can you still eat that carbon or lashlishi the next night? This is a question of our brisa Rashi. Or lashlishi or knisasai shal shlishi, the night that leads into the 3rd day. Rashi tells us we're talking about the shlomim offering. The Torah says the day of bringing the carbon you eat it. By the way, folks, this Shabbos we're reading Vayakel Pekudei, and next week we start Vayikra, which is all about karbanos. So this is a little bit a good introduction to our new season. It says you're allowed to eat your offering today and tomorrow. You have to burn it on the 3rd day. So what happens in the window between the 2nd day and the 3rd day? You don't burn it till the 3rd day, so maybe you should be allowed to eat it that night. So Gemara says Vidinhu. We have a way to figure this out with logic, with Mishnaic logic. In offering a zvachim, you have offerings that are only allowed to be eaten for 1 day. And then you have a shlomim that's eaten for 2 days. So just as in the zvachim offering, there's a precedent that the halacha is laila achar yoim. You can eat the carbon the day it's brought and the next nighttime. Afkan laila achar yoim. Similarly, here you should be allowed to eat your shlomim on the night leading into the 3rd day. This is the question. No, sorry. This is the text of a brisa that discusses when your carbon expires, when the shlomim carbon expires. You might have thought you could eat it for the 3rd night, the night that leads into the 3rd day. Therefore, the Torah clarifies: you can eat it in the day and the next day. And what remains until the 3rd day you burn. The way the limud goes, you can eat it only in daytime. You do not eat that carbon on the 3rd night. So again, it's a brisa with a dialogue which concludes that a shlomim carbon is only allowed to be eaten for 2 days, but the 3rd night leading into the 3rd day it is not eaten. What is the point of this Gemara? Not necessarily for us to become well versed in the laws of shlomim, is to talk to us about the word bar. But the brisa continues this one more line. I might think you cannot eat it once the sun sets on the 2nd day. Maybe you burn it right away. And indeed, it would be logical. You might think, just like by the zvachim, you burn it right after it can no longer be eaten. Maybe the same halacha applies to shlomim. The Torah clarifies that you do not burn a shlomim right once it expires. You wait till the morning. The expired shlomim, although it cannot be eaten at nighttime, you wait till the daytime to burn it. That's a long brisa. And now let's see the punch. Or lashlishi. The fact that the language of the brisa is it should be eaten or lashlishi, the night leading to the 3rd day, and it's clearly night because that's the whole context of our discussion. Alma, we have another source that proves to us or that the word or tohu means nighttime. The Gemara says shmamina. Yes, you found me another powerful source, a powerful usage of the word or to mean nighttime. Let's just see a few Rashis, even though we kind of zip through it. Zvachim. What does a zvachim mean? We just said zvachim means another carbon. Toida. This is a Thanksgiving offering. The toida offering, a Thanksgiving carbon, is only eaten on the days. Vishlomim, but a free, a non-mandatory carbon that you bring at your own volition because you want to come visit and do something nice for your relationship with Hashem and the base of Mikdash and take care of the kain of yourself. Those nechal l'shnei yamim, By the way, carbon Pesach is the same thing. Pesach. We know that the carbon Pesach is eaten the night. So you might think so you might think that the same thing would apply to the shlamim. So the Brisa quotes a verse that proves to us that it's only eaten in the daytime. Again, Rashi explained to us the Brisa. The Toida and the carbon Pesach, I think, are burnt right after its expiration. You would think the same thing would apply to shlamim. That's man achilas like kol harvest. Therefore, the verse proves to us b'tzavis Aaron in Parshas Tzav, right? Second Parsha Vayikra. Yom Hashlishi be'eshi yisarv kanli never ad yom elobiyom. So the high crawl the Irib is man achila elobasreifa. So again, the Brisa has a verse, and Rashi explains that it clearly proves that it's burnt in the day. So our second Brisa, a Mishnah and our Brisa that prove that R means night. Not done yet. Now we're going to bring another source that uses the word R. And again, maybe the Gemara has an ulterior motive. We want to clarify for once and for all in many different places where we use the word R to clarify its meaning. And so that's what the Gemara is doing. We're doing a conclusive entry on the subject of R. Here is a text describing Yom Kippur rites, Yom Kippur rituals. Here's a Brisa that says, or the night leading into Yom Kippur, Yidavin, 7 blessings, the Kohen Gadol, 7 blessings, and he does a vidoy. Shacharis mispal sheva misvada. I'm sorry, no, I don't think we're talking about the king. I think we're talking about everyone. Shacharis mispal sheva misvada. You say 7 brachas and you do a vidoy. The most of mispal sheva misvada. During most of Yom Kippur, you say 7 blessings and you do vidoy. Mincha mispal sheva misvada. But Arvis mispal me'ein shmonas. And then Arvis, Matzi Yom Kippur, you daven a short version of Shemona Esrei. What does that mean? Probably the prayer of Havinenu, which is a short synopsis when a person is halachas that talk about when a person is in a rush, you have to travel or whatever. So it seems like Ma'ariv, you could do a Me'ein Shmoina, an abridged version. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel Omer, Mishum Avoisav. Chanina ben Gamliel says, no. Small Shemona Esrei Shleimois, Neshut Tzarech Lemer Havdalah v'Chein Adas. We're not going to let you off the hook, Matzi and Kippur, the shorter prayer, even though you could imagine that, after everyone's fasting for so long and there's a delicious breakfast bread, and you heard the shofar already and people want to run, maybe you can make a shorter Shemona Esrei. Chanina ben Gamliel says that's not going to work. You know why? Because we need to say Atochen Antonu in the bracha B'Chein Adas, and the prayer of Havinenu, which is one paragraph that references all the middle blessings, does not provide that opportunity. But all of this is only to make one point, which is Alma Ar Tahu. You see over here, Ar Shal Yom Kippurim, and it's clear from the context. We go Ar Shachris Musaf. Clearly, this means nighttime. Alma Ar Tahu. Another proof that Ar means night. Shema Mina. Yes, you got it. 100%.
Be quiet.
Harold, talk about beating a dead horse. But no, the point here is not only to prove our point, but it's also to find other places and clarify for them what Ar means. Eli, you were saying something?
I was saying also they say Birkat Halevana. That's also a bracha they say after Yom Kippur. It's a big bracha.
Yeah. Tashema. Now we're going down to the essential halachic matter. One last time. And this is where we're going to close out this discussion. Tashema. Tana Devei Shmuel. Until now we were talking about Ar in the abstract, its usage. Those are night. Now we're going to quote a Brisa, which is a reframing of our Mishnah. Tani Devei Shmuel, here is a teaching from the school of Shmuel. Leilei Arba Asar, on the 14th night, the night leading into the 14th of Nisan, Boit Kinesa Chametz Laraner, we do Bidikas Chametz Laraner to candlelight. At nighttime, we do Bidikas Chametz. Alma or to. From here, we see not only in the macro that or means night, but we have a clear proof that our Mishnah unambiguously and without a doubt actually means night. So much so, we have another tradition quoting our very same Mishnah. It translates, deciphers, or preserves the language as Latin.
Rabbi,
Yes.
maybe it's question not to you, but to Dr. Stammer. What, as a result of this discussion, how does the Hebrew English dictionary translates or? Is there night among the potential meanings?
Hebrew English dictionary. I mean, the short answer is yes, but I feel better if we could not rely on what I say. By this, not really how to do it, because quite frankly, Google
Just light.
Rabbi,
but as a matter of the professor actually, I asked him this a while, and then the doctor I asked a while back. I don't think he's on today. But in a more poetic or a higher Hebrew, you would use or to convey nighttime. Certainly, in a more rabbinic Hebrew parlance, you would use or to reference the nighttime, and that's actually something you see commonly even today. If you go into a base, if you go into a base medrash, there's someone's ringing a few times. Let me just make sure it's not an emergency. I'm sorry. Give me one.
Okay.
Rabbi, I would ask that question in another way. For all the citations here where we introduce night into the word or, there must be 1,000 where or is for light. So, the argument is sort of
Bernie,
an exception.
he's talking on the phone, Bernie.
Oh, I thought he was looking for something.
All right, folks, sorry about that. When a person calls me 6 times, I assume there's an emergency. There might be an emergency, but no, they just.
Are you off now?
I'm off now. I'm back.
So my question is sort of like the professors. For all the arguments we see here, where night might be part of the definition for or, we have thousands of places where or is simply light. We could citate as many as we want.
So hold on. We know that or means light, but or in a calendar reference or as a time means night. I want to see how I want to find it in the dictionary, because I don't know if in modern Hebrew you'll see it used that way. I know that in rabbinic Hebrew, if you walk into a base medrash and they want to tell you that there's going to be a special shiur on Tuesday night, they might write or Liyom Revi'i, and that would be very well understood in a rabbinic. When I say rabbinic, I mean in a yeshivish or Talmudic society. I'm just curious to see if any of the modern Hebrew dictionaries actually make that case. Dr. Stamler did tell us that you'll find it in a, but it's also possible that he grew up in Tel Aviv at a time where there was a lot of that scholarly, but in conversational Hebrew, you're not going to use that. All right, you'll have to take my word for it. But it's not the prevailing way that a person would say it, but that is all right. So again, now we've gone to the essential discussion, which is what is the halachic matter? Can we bring proof not just that in a broad usage or means night, but in our very context or means? And now we have to ask a question that we asked early on, but now we can ask it again. Why do we not just figure out what people have been doing for B'dikas Chametz until this discussion? We have a machloikas what or means. But the machloikas was born in the year 350, 400. But Jews have been around for close to 2,000 years. No, 1,500 years at this point. So why don't we just find out what Jews were doing until then? Why do you need to ask anyone? Just go into someone's home and ask the kids, when does Tati do B'dikas Chametz? Okay, in Bavel in the 300, I don't think they called their fathers Tati, but you know what I'm saying. So let's see the Gemara now. The Gemara is going to actually make this point. Ella, now that we've clarified that or absolutely means night, Bein Rav Huna, Bein Rav Yehuda, really everybody agrees. The Kule Alma or to everybody agrees. You know, we will not find any person who actually does B'dikas Chametz on Erev Pesach in the daytime. Everybody agrees that or means orta. Look at that word orta. It even sounds like or. V'lei pligi. Mar ki asre. Umar ki asre. Each rabbi translated the word or into their local dialect of Hebrew or Aramaic. But Asrei de Rav Huna. In Rav Huna's region, you know what they said when they wanted to describe night? Karu Nagi. They used the word Nagi to describe night. Uba Asrei de Rav Yehuda. But in the region of Rav Yehuda, Karu Lele, they said it's night. They used the word Lele. And so there's two different Aramaic words that call nighttime. One, Rav Yehuda's people, they call night. And Rav Huna's town described night by calling it light, just like the Hebrew word or means light. Why would you use the word light to describe the nighttime? And the same question, why would you use the word or, which means light, to describe night? And why is there this language? We're playing games. We're trying to confuse visitors. They shouldn't know what we mean. So we're describing day at night and night at day. That's not a very nice thing to do. What's going on? Yeah, I just want to open this into another page so we can have some fun in a second. So that's essentially the Gemara's question, which leads us to another fascinating and essential discussion. Which again, I promised. I hope you'll agree with me. I think you'll find this very interesting. I hope you're already finding this very interesting. What a plot twist! For the last 4 days, we're trying to figure out the word or means, and it turns out no one was even arguing. Okay, so now let's go down to the essential question. If everybody agrees that it means night, why don't we just talk plain English or plain Hebrew? Everybody knows that the easiest word for night is Lila. So just use the word Lila. Vitana Dida. Now let's go back to our mission and ask an important question. My time like Hatani Lele. Just use pure, uncomplicated, unambiguous language. Good question. And let's read Rashi. Kidatana de Beis Shmuel. As we read from Beis Shmuel, that there was a tradition, a concurrent tradition that read the Mishnah as Lila. And the Gemara answers, Lishna Ma'al Yehudinakat. We want to use higher language. Okay, that's not really what it means. We want to use nicer, more positive language. What's better? It's a more refined the language of Rashi. Alishna ma'alya kamahader. Shemitzvah v'derech naki nikiyeh hadas l'saper b'lashon nikiyeh. It's a mitzvah. And for those that are really nikiyeh hadas, help me out over here. The best that I mentioned, to speak in a lashon nikiyeh, in a key language. It's not dirty like in we would imagine dirty means, but let's first look at the precedent. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, as we find that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, the Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, la'olam al yotzi adam davar meguna mipiv. A person should never say something not nice, something crude. Okay, crude is actually a good word. Shaharei ikem hakasav shmoina oises. The Torah was willing to bend itself into a pretzel, to add an additional 8 letters rather, so as not to use a crude language. Shinemar, as the verse states in Parshas Bereishis, Parshas Noach, in Chumash Bereishis, Min habehema hatohira. Noach took animals into his ark. What animals did he take? Min habehema hatohira, umin habehema, and he chose animals asher einena tehira, not pure. Why didn't the Torah just use the word timeya on impure? Why does he use the word einena tehira, not tahar?
Torah always tries to use the nicer language.
Sorry?
We always try to use the nicer language. Never.
Yeah,
rather than
that's
Tame
exactly what the
say,
Gemara is saying here. My time on Laitani Lately. I'm sorry here. Davar Muguna. Lav Mishum the Lately Davar Mugunu. This is not really to say that Lila, there's anything wrong with Lila. So the Rashi clarifies, we're not trying to say that the word Lila is a bad word. All we're saying is that the Chachamim will go out of their way to use an even better, higher, more refined language.
Rabbi, is it correct that they use the term enemies of Israel?
I'm sorry?
Is it correct that they use the term enemies of Israel to mean Israel, to mean Jews?
For example, I don't know if this is precisely that idea, but it is essentially the same gist, which is that if the Torah is going to talk about a misfortune to happen to the Jewish people, it would rather not say that a misfortune should befall the Jewish people, so it'll say the enemies of Israel, but it actually means the Jewish people. And so, yeah, we find that there is this. Yes.
It just struck me. How do we have an Indian of Torah or Lo Torah at the time of Noah? Based on what?
Either.
Huh.
Clearly.
It just struck me for the first time. Sorry.
Clearly, the idea of kosher and unkosher, although the halachic aspect is introduced to us in the Chumash, clearly there was already such an idea of animals that were tahar and not tahar. Right? Right?
Possible.
It's not, I mean, that's pshat. That is what the Chumash means when it says that. That is an interesting. So the Gemara, so Rabbi Shua Levi teaches us that the Torah is willing, instead of writing Timeya, write Einena Tehira. Like Siv, Habehema Hatmeya Ki Orchei Hari Shmoina Oisis Ikim Hatmeya Chamesh Oisis Asher Einena Tehira Shlish Asher Oisis. Afagav the Raisik Siv Tamei. The Torah does use the word Tamei, so how can you say that the Torah here doesn't use the word Tamei because it doesn't want to? How can you say the Torah dislikes the word Tamei if he uses it? Rashi says something interesting. Shani orchei bechaduchta. The Torah goes out of its way in one place. To teach you the message, the lesson that we ideally seek a better, higher language.
No.
Put them all in here somewhere and then have an empty shelf with something more important, you know?
I'm sorry, someone's saying something?
Can't hear either.
All right. So in conclusion, and we'll continue here tomorrow, we'll just finalize a few details here. The bottom line, the punchline, the essence here is that the Torah teaches us to try to use an even more refined language. And even though R leads to a little bit of confusion and necessitated a full page of Gemara to figure it out, it's a more refined, elevated, dignified language. And tomorrow we'll continue on this subject just a little bit, and maybe we'll probe and we'll gain some clarity as to why R is better language, and if there is a general desire to talk in that way, as well as other sources, other verses where the Torah seems to deviate for the same objective. But the crux of the essential issue is, why would the Mishnah use R instead of Lila, leading to some confusion? Because the Torah wants to use, the Mishnah wanted to use this elevated, refined language, particularly as we launch a new Masechta, the very first word, there's a preference to use the word R versus Lila as a way to start a new Masechta, because R, Rebberal, as you said, ultimately also means light. And so that's a nice beautiful Jewish kind of word and way to start off in the Masech. So we'll continue. We'll finish this up tomorrow. And we'll get into the meat and potatoes of our Masech, the discussion of B'dikas Chametz and onward. My dear friends, thank you so much for joining.
Rabbi, what's a good time to call you?
Whenever.
Or you want to call me?
I have a bad track record of calling you, so call me whenever. Whenever you have a few minutes, call me.
Okay.
Gentlemen, have a good day. Ladies, have a good day. Thank you so much for joining. And
Yom Tov. Have a good day, guys.
Hashem's help and good health.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Chumash, please re-click the same link to study Chumash in just a moment. Yom Tov.